Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @PrestigiouSPod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, @ChrisBeanOfficial, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Paul Thornton, who has been a student and teacher of leadership for over 40 years. Paul has a vast experience that spans across fields like coaching, management, and education. He's here to share some valuable insights into leadership styles, organizational alignment, and more. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Very good. So, Paul, let's start with a little bit of background. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Who I am? Good question. I taught at the college level for 20 years and primarily leadership and management courses. Prior to that, I worked 20 years in a large corporation in a variety of roles, but most of them were in human resources. And I'm a parent of 2 children and grandparent of 5 grandsons.
Wow. So teaching leadership at the college level, that's an interesting experience. I'm trying to think back to my college days. I can't remember leadership being a course that was something that I could take at my college, and maybe my college just didn't offer that. But is that a standard thing that colleges offer?
I think it has become a standard thing. I think when I was in college, and sounds like when you were in college, it was more management, was the course. Principles of management was taught. I think there's been an evolution that we need leaders, and the leadership function is a critically important part of what organizations and families and communities need. So I think many schools now are offering leadership.
Very good. Now, of course, being in the field that you were in, being in the leadership realm, I'm sure you've interviewed tons of people for leadership roles. And I guess my question with that is, what are some key differences that you notice between those who end up being really effective leaders and those who kind of struggle to inspire others?
Good question, Chris. I think 3 things come to mind. Number one, I think the great leaders are really clear on what they believe and value. That gives them a lot of credibility. I think number 2, they're very capable of describing the future possibilities, the vision, what we can become. They can do that very clearly, succinctly, and in a compelling way. They get people excited about it. And number 3, I think they connect well with people. They are interested in people. They believe in people. They find common ground, and they find a way to engage and mobilize people to sign up and pursue a better future.
All
So
right.
those kind of 3 things that stand out for me.
Yeah. So they have a clear vision. They can communicate well with others, and they have a high emotional intelligence. To kind of
Yep.
sum those up, yeah.
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 Well, emotional and intellectual. They clearly are clear on what they think. Their beliefs are clear. Their values are clear. They have empathy and can understand what others are thinking and feeling as well. So, that's all part of it.
Now, I know early on I was told that all leaders, quote unquote, all leaders have to be charismatic to be a leader, to be in charge of people. You have to be charismatic. And over the time, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but over time, I found that you don't necessarily need to be charismatic on any and all things that you do, but you do need to know how to motivate and inspire the people that you're hoping that follow you. And if you can do that in a way that is then you don't have to fake that charismatic type of personality if you don't automatically have that.
I agree, Chris. I don't think you need to be charismatic, but I do think you need to firmly believe in your vision, firmly believe in your beliefs, firmly believe in people. That's critical. And if you come across as someone who has unwavering commitment to your goal and vision and your people, that energizes them and gets them committed to the direction you want to go in, gets them excited.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know?
Yeah. Now, of course, you've written extensively about leadership styles, even teaching leadership, specifically directing, discussing, and delegating, those key things. I wonder if you can kind of walk us through these styles. What do they mean, and how would one use those in their leadership styles?
Yeah, those are three styles I've talked a lot about and done seminars and workshops on. I try to boil things down to the very basic concepts so they're practical and usable. And I think these three styles are applicable to being a parent, a teacher, coach, team leader. It really covers the waterfront. So directing, if a person has no experience, they're a novice, they've never done the task before, you use a directing style, which means you tell the person what to do, how to do it, and typically when to have it done by. They want and need direction. This summer, I was teaching my 12-year-old grandson how to dock my boat at the gas pier, and he had never done it before. He had no idea what to do. So I told him what he had to do, the angle he had to go in at, the speed, what to do here and there. And he needed a lot of direction, a lot of feedback, a lot of correcting what he was doing. You might say I was micromanaging him the first few times he docked the boat, which again is what he needed. Now, as people grow and develop, you move into the discussing style. With discussing, you, the leader, are really asking questions to see how the person's thinking about the problem or opportunity and what's their plan. What are they going to do? Now, going back to my grandson, after he had done it 3 or 4 times, I would start to ask him questions. What's your plan? It's a windy day. What are you thinking about here? Why do you need to adjust, this and that? So I was getting his thoughts and ideas. When you use a discussing style, you're really forcing the person to think, right? You got to think about the answers to the questions. You got to plan ahead. You got to think ahead. If you're working in a team setting, using a discussing style, the person's learning to collaborate, to work with others, build on the ideas of others, things like that. So that approach is helpful to help the person grow and develop and gain more insights and what have you. The third style is delegating. If a person's done a task 28 times, they don't need you, the leader, telling them what to do or how to do it. They don't need a discussion, right? They know what to do. Again, it's kind of like my grandson. After he had docked the boat, 20 times, he didn't need any more direction. He knew how to do it. So I would just say to him, okay, here are the keys to the boat. Go over, fill it up with gas, and come back in a while. And he would go and get it done, and no big deal. So the point is, each style is appropriate in certain situations. And as a leader, you got to figure out what's going to help the person succeed with this task. So you got to look at the person, their skills, their experience, their business savvy, and the task they're doing. And also the time factor. In an emergency situation, you want direction. If your house is burning down, you're not going to call a meeting and say, what do you think we should do? And, let's brainstorm. You want quick, decisive action. So use the style, bottom line, use the style that fits the needs of the situation. And again, I think that's applicable for a parent, coach, or team leader, manager in a business. You use these three styles all the time.
And really, you're calling them styles, but really they're different. You use them in different times, and it seems like you want to use the directing when whoever it is just starting that first those first couple times, and then as they've done it a little bit, like you talked about with your grandson, then you go through the discussing phase, and then you go to the delegation phase. But you're moving your individuals from one style, one area from directing to discussing. And then when they kind of graduate from there, then they move on to delegation. But you're moving them across the board. And as a good leader, as a good manager, you have to be able to know when is it time to move which step. But on top of
Mm-hmm.
that, you also need to know how to finesse the situation so that matches the person and whatever it is that they're doing in that moment, because it could be something that you perhaps haven't witnessed them do before. So you're bringing them through the directing stage, and you have to be able,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case, quickly shift gears to discussion if that's important, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even, okay, yeah, it looks like you got this. I'm just going to let you do this and that,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll come back and check on you when you get done. But being able to utilize them and shift back and forth between them, that is really the key things.
I think you nailed it, Chris. I think a leader needs to be self-aware and aware of the situation and the person they're dealing with. And you need to be flexible and adjustable and make quick changes as needed. And I think it's important to never forget the important point that as a leader, you're trying to help the person perform at their best, right? So it's kind of like, what can I do to help them perform at their best? What will be most, helpful? What will motivate them? What will engage them? And what motivates an experienced person is just simply saying, take care of this, you know what to do, handle it, just get it done by this date, or that type of thing. So yeah, you got to be quick on your feet. You got to adapt and be flexible, and use the style again that's going to help the person achieve and be successful.
And of course, as a manager, we also have to be careful, because we will probably tend to gravitate towards one of those over the other. And I'm sure
Yeah.
in your leadership career, you're going to move and be in one area, and then that's going to happen. But you have to be careful about not seeming like or factually picking favorites, where it's really easy to work with Jim because I can just delegate the stuff to Jim, and then he's just, okay, great, go on and do your thing, Jim. But then I'm
Yep.
not discussing with Pam, who needs the discussion method, and I'm not directing Jeff because he's on that early. So I have to make sure as a manager that I'm not, and maybe you're not actually picking favorites, but it can be definitely perceived as picking favorites
Hmm.
if you don't do all of these things appropriately. So really having these, kind of defined and clear for the persons or people who are in charge is really important.
I couldn't agree more. The micromanager has gotten a bad name because they always use that style. They never deviate. They never ask questions. They never delegate. It's just micromanagement. That's not good. It's not effective. A person that knows what to do and how to do it doesn't want to be micromanaged. That's going to demotivate them. You're right. Some leaders I've come across, they have one style that they always use, and that's not good. Some managers also overuse the delegating style. They keep delegating to their superstars who they know will do a great job, but they overwhelm them, and they burn them out, so to speak, and that's not good. And going back to discussing, I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, meetings where the leader, the discussion goes on and on and on and on. It never ends. At some point in the discussion, you need to make a decision. At some point, there's got to be either the leader says, okay, I've heard all the inputs, I appreciate it, I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to make a decision by the end of the day. Or working with the team, collectively, they decide as a group, we're going to do X, Y, Z. But at some point, you got to make a decision. with directing, some people are too direct. They're too in your face. Do it my way or you're fired. My way or the highway idea. That's not good either. You're being professional in all of your interactions, and you're providing the person what's going to help them get the task done at a high level. You're helping them perform at their best.
Yeah.
I keep going back to that core principle that I think is very important.
Right, because when we focus on getting the employee to perform at the best, and if all the employees are performing at the best that they can, then of course the business is going to be winning because all the employees are winning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
my best isn't your best versus somebody else's best. And as a leader, we need to understand that we're looking for that individual's best, not
Yep.
necessarily a standardized best, because those are two very different things.
Right. It's sort of like raising children. I've used this example before, but early on in life, we use a directing child with our young child. We tell them what to wear and when to eat and what they can do, what they can't do. It's a very structured environment they're in. As they get a little bit older, we start to discuss more with them. What do you think about this? What would you like to do? What's your goal here? What do you see as potential obstacles? If a friend says do X, Y, Z, what would you say? Role playing. And then, of course, later in life, when they're in their late teens, let's say, it's more delegating. You want them to manage their lives and make decisions and take action and, get things done. You're there as a parent to help and assist as needed, but you want the child to, be mature, be an adult, and make decisions and achieve your goals. So that's another kind of way to look at it, I guess.
Very good. Now, I know that one of your focuses is leadership processes. You've broken this down into diagnosing the current situation, identifying improvement opportunities, and preparing your message, along with creating an implementation plan. How important do you think it is for leaders to follow this kind of structured approach? And perhaps you can go into a little bit more detail for that as well.
Well, I think having a process is important. I think knowing what steps to go through helps the leader effectively achieve the results that they're looking for. Step number one in my little process is diagnose the current situation. It's kind of like a doctor, diagnoses the patient. You got to figure out what's going on first before you can add value. So I think as a leader, it's important to find out with the person or team you're working with it's what's working well, where are they being successful, and what's their biggest problem, what's holding them back. Now, of course, that takes a lot of questioning and a lot of observations and a lot of looking at the data and all that, but getting a sense of where are things now. And then the second step is, what can I do to add value? How can I help the team or individual or organization improve their performance? What would be the best action that could be taken to up their game? And of course, again, that takes a lot of analysis and a lot of looking at a lot of factors and data and what have you. Third step is presenting your message. Typically, you have to present your message to two different groups. One group you got to present your message to get their permission and funding to proceed, like your boss. And then the other group is the group that needs to change in some way. You got to convince them that your idea, your proposal will in fact help them improve results. So how would you do that? What would you say? That type of thing. And then the fourth one is plan and implement. No matter what type of change you're talking about, big or small, you need a plan. And the plan lays out all the steps and actions and assignments that are needed to make the plan become a reality. But what's key to my little model is if you think of those 4 steps as like a diamond, they're each one of those 4 parts of a diamond. In the middle of it, I have the words involve others. And I think the very best leaders involve the right people at each step in the process. By the right people, I mean they get input from customers, suppliers, employees, other managers, that type of thing. But they solicit and get input and ideas from other people. And that helps them make better decisions. There's a lot of talk these days about being inclusive. And for me, that means including the number of viewpoints that you're inviting into the conversation to help you, the leader, make the best decision. And at each step in the process, you might be inviting different people into the discussion and getting inputs from different, folks. Now, some people don't go to anybody. They make all the decisions themselves. I know, and I'm going to do it, and my way or the highway. Some people go to the 1 or 2 people they always go to, so that's a limited amount of information they're getting. Some people surround themselves with yes people. They tell you what you want to hear, and that really doesn't help you much. And some people, they say they want to get input and advice and guidance, but they're really closed-minded, right? They don't really fully consider the ideas they are given. So that's a problem. So yeah, I think those 4 steps help leaders implement and achieve the change goals that will again help the individual or team perform at a higher level.
And okay, so as you're explaining those further for me, I think that probably many times the leaders, the managers, the business owners in these situations are able to diagnose the current problem, the current situation, because they're getting feedback from either their employees or from clients or customers. They're complaining for whatever the problem actually is. So they're getting the problem presented to them. That's how they can diagnose the situation. But they have to go a step further, because oftentimes I think that humans, perhaps in general, or because businesses don't do the job of thoroughly solving problems anymore, but instead they put band-aids on it. And so I'll use that term. They would put a band-aid and they would fix the actual complaint, but they're not actually fixing the underlying issue of what's going on. So diagnosing the current situation goes a little bit further, not just those surface level things, but what is actually causing those surface level things. And then once you can actually figure out what the root cause of the problem is, then you can identify some improvement opportunities, right? What can we change to improve this, whatever the root cause of the problem is? And then of course, right, you have to go through the proper chain of command. You have to prepare your message, then you have to deliver that to, the big boss, and then the actual people who are in charge of who, that are going to be implementing the change for whatever it is. And with that, you kind of have to couple that with having a plan. Like, what is the plan? What are we going to do factually and clearly and definitively to help to solve this root issue? And I know from my experience, and I'm sure that other people in leadership opportunities or leadership positions experience this as well. They go through maybe a truncated version of this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, just because of whatever it is that's going on in the business. Especially, I'm thinking like HR professionals. They're going through stuff like this on a daily, multiple times a day, because this is kind of the way that they operate, or the way that they should be operating through their day. And the leaders, if the manager, the business owner can go through a really simple and easy to understand version of this diamond mindset, then that is really key for being able to run the business appropriately, because then you are able to fix whatever the concern is, whatever the problem that arises is, in a very effective and structured approach.
Yeah, I think, Chris, your first point is right on. A lot of times we deal with symptoms of really the underlying problem. And a lot of times managers will say, this is the problem, we need to do XYZ and, blah, blah, blah. And if you really dig into it and really took a little more time to probe and understand what's really beneath the problem they're identifying, what's causing it, you get closer to the core problem that will really help make things better. Um, I was in charge of training and development at a company, and I can't tell you how many times managers would come to me and say, this is a problem. We need more training. We need more training. That was their sole reason for many of the performance problems that were being caused in their department. And looking into a lot of them, well, no, it wasn't training. People knew what to do. They knew how to do it. They had the skills. It was more, sometimes it was a compensation problem. Sometimes it was a supervisor or manager that was very ineffective. So there were other issues or other reasons why people weren't performing at the level that the overall manager wanted them to perform at. So yeah, digging into the diagnosis, just like a doctor, you go into a doctor and you present symptoms. I got a fever and this hurts and that hurts. Well, okay, that's good, but why? What's the underlying thing that's happening with this person? How do you do the testing and the analysis and looking at the data to pinpoint what is the underlying problem and then go from there? And of course, if you get the problem wrong to start with and spend all this time and money and effort, where are you at the end of that? You're no further along than you were at the beginning. So that's what often happens. There's been various studies done that somewhere between, I don't know, 50 to 70% of the change initiatives do not produce the desired results. So it's a big number. I think we can do better than that. And I think if you take a little bit of time and follow my 4 steps and engage the right people at each step in that process, you'll get better results.
Well, okay, so engaging the right people, I think, like you said, that's kind of the center of the diamond. That's kind of the
Yeah.
key thing, the thread that runs throughout all of those, because
Yep.
the big boss, the manager, they don't know what the day to day is like for what the ground people are doing, what the
Mm-hmm.
line people are doing, what the floor people, just because they're not there, and perhaps they were never there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's great when
Yeah.
you can start low and then you work your way up. And listen, I know exactly what it was like to be there because I was. But
Yep.
oftentimes we don't have those people in those the owner wasn't often there, the
Mm-hmm.
manager wasn't often there, so they don't know what that's like, and so that day to day issues that the line people are facing, unless they get feedback from them,
Mm-hmm.
then I think
Yep.
that's where that falls short. They'll make these things, these changes. Oh yeah, these things are going to be but you don't consult the people who are doing the day to day, and it
Yeah.
falls apart so quickly. I hear that so many times from business owners that, we made these changes, but it didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? Well, it's because you didn't talk to the people who are on the front lines that are interacting with those things.
Mm-hmm.
Take an
Yep.
opportunity, ask them questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get some feedback from
Yep.
them. What is this going
Yep.
to be like? What is this like for you? Then you can make an informed decision on what their new job, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
what their new day to day is going to be like. But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
consult them, they just see
Yep.
changes as, oh, they didn't like what I was doing, or it it's really tough when you're not consulting the people who are on the floor, who
Mm-hmm.
are you're in the boss, or in the fancy high rise penthouse changing. Oh yeah, we're going to do this and this and this, but you don't think about those people, right?
Mm.
Those are the people whose job you're affecting. You're changing. You're changing what they're doing on a day.
Mm.
If you can consult with them, if you can
Mm-hmm.
interact with them, get
Yeah.
an idea of what that's like,
Yeah.
then you can make an informed decision. Then
Yeah.
you can actually make those decisions that would improve their overall performance, and then of course the business as well. Hey everyone, it's Chris Bean here from the Prestigious Initiative. If you're looking to level up your life and unlock your full potential, I've got some exciting news for you. My recent guest, Joel Gandara, has an incredible program called 31 Days to Become a Better Man. Joel has packed years of life-changing insights into this easy-to-read book, guaranteed to help you rethink your shortcomings and redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. But that's not all. Joel also offers powerful one-on-one sessions and group classes to guide you on your journey. And he has a special offer for the Prestigious Initiative listeners. You can get $19.99 off the program when you use code PRESTIGIOUS at checkout. Don't wait. Take your first steps towards becoming the best version of yourself today. Visit 31dailychallenges.com and use the code PRESTIGIOUS for your discount. And now back to the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also some leaders, as I was saying before, they go to the same one person on the front line to get input from. And what I'm suggesting is you got to broaden that and talk to, rather than talk to that one person, talk to 5 people, You also maybe need to talk to the customer. How happy or dissatisfied is the customer of the output of the process that you're managing or looking at? You also have to talk to people in other companies that operate similar processes. How do they do it? What's their approach? So the narrow view of dealing with the symptom or just going to one person for their advice isn't broad enough. You got to expand your circle and get more input to get a clear understanding of really what is going on and what's happening and what's the root cause of it and, blah, blah, blah. How do I make it better?
That's right. Now, I know one of the key things that we talked about that a leader has to have is that ability to have a clear vision, a clear goal for their business, for the team to follow, and then be able to communicate that well. And I think that having a goal is, of course, crucial for in life as it is in business. What advice would you have for leaders who are looking to clean up their goals, to have a specific goal that then they can delegate or they can communicate to their teams to be able to fulfill on that vision that they have?
Yeah, that's goals are really critical. And I think it's important to, as a leader, first of all, be clear in your own mind about the company's mission and vision, the big picture idea. What's this company doing? What's their mission? Where are they trying to get to? And then number 2, what does my boss expect of me? How is my boss measuring me and my department or me and my team? And kind of getting a good sense and clarity on that to begin with. Then I need to set goals for myself and for my team. Setting goals for myself, it could be, what are the task goals I need to get done? I got to produce X number of widgets and certain quality standards and things like that. Personal development goals. How can I be a better leader? What can I improve at? Setting some goals there. And then going down to my team, setting goals with them. Now, any goal to be worthwhile needs to be specific. It's got to be clear. It's got to be measurable. And I think if it is specific, it's usually measurable. And there needs to be a due date. Goals without due dates just don't get done. So setting goals for your team, again, they need to be specific and have a date attached to them. But going back to what we talked about earlier, Chris, the 3 styles. If you worked for me, I could say to you, Chris, here are your goals for the next 6 months. Here are 8 goals I want you to achieve. They got dates on them. Go get it done. I'm directing you. I'm telling you, here are your goals. I could say to you, Chris, I want to have a discussion about your goals for the next 6 months. So I want to meet tomorrow, and I want you to come prepared to talk about what you see as your goals in these 4 areas. So you come in and we have a discussion. And you tell me, I think my goal should be this, and I say why, and what's your reasoning there, and how'd you come up with that, and blah, blah, blah. Or I could say to you, Chris, you've been around here a long time. You know what's going on. You're clear on the mission, the vision. I could delegate. I could say, Chris, I want you to come up with your own goals over the next week. And I want to meet with you and I want to just review your goals. And if I have a comment here or there, I might make one, but I want you to come up with your goals. Okay. So again, depending on the maturity and the experience of the person, I can use different styles of setting goals. And typically, the more I go towards the delegating style, the more commitment the person has to that goal because they came up with the goal. It's their goal. Now, it's assuming they're coming up with a goal that's fairly relevant and, connects to what the department has to get done and that type of thing. So anyway, that's kind of my thinking on that. How you set them is equally important to what you set.
Now, okay, so that's kind of interesting. So would you take somebody kind of along the path? Like maybe you would do the first time you would set goals with somebody or have that opportunity to set those up. Would you do the opportunity for you to kind of be there and kind of give them the goal? Or would you move? And I guess perhaps in my head, I'm thinking, okay, the first time we do this, I'm going to help you every step of the way. And then depending on how that goes will depend on if I delegate them to you or if we have a discussion about them. And probably the answer is going to be discussion because the first time the goals were mine given to you, so you're going to have less ownership over those. So you're going to be less likely to do those. So probably the default would be to have a discussion about them. Okay, let's discuss. We'll collaborate together with these goals. That way you have a little bit of ownership. I have a little bit of guidance that I think is probably important. And then depending on how that goes, then you would give the opportunity just to delegate. Okay, listen, you set up the goals. We're going to meet in a week to talk about what they look like. Here's the lowdown. I like this one. I don't like this one. Let's tweak this and so on. Would that be kind of the standard protocol?
Well, again, I think it goes back to the person's experience and their skills and that type of thing. And some goals might be, non-negotiable. Your boss may have given you a goal. Let's say you're in sales. Your boss has given you a goal that your department must sell X number of widgets for the year. So one goal might be, I'm directing you, your goal regarding the number of things you need to sell is, this amount. So there you may be directing the person, but then there might be 2 or 3 other areas where you want to have a discussion. Personal development and improving a process and things like that. So again, some of these things would like to have really simple, easy formulas. It doesn't always work that way. And as you said before, you got to use good judgment. You got to be flexible and use an approach that's going to make sense and help the person get as much buy-in to the goal as possible. So I used to set goals with my team, and I often would use a combination of all 3 styles. I might say this is arbitrary or this is non-negotiable. This one, I want to discuss these 3, but this particular goal, personal development or something, I want you to come up with your goal. So I might use all 3 styles in that meeting then with the employee.
Yeah. Now, of course, I think the next step after goal setting, the natural progression is feedback. And I think that, of course, feedback is everybody has their own interpretation of what feedback is and what they think about it. But I think it's tricky for many leaders to kind of navigate what that is, right? Can you share some of your thoughts on how leaders can give constructive feedback while keeping their teams motivated and engaged as opposed to deflated?
Yeah, I think modeling feedback is important to begin with. I think that as a leader, you yourself need to be asking for feedback from your team, from your colleagues, from your boss. So if you model feedback, you can make the case that we all need feedback, but set a good example. getting feedback, I believe, is critical for all of us to, get input that we can think about and make changes and hopefully improve our performance over time. Again, going back to the three styles, I could say to the person, I've observed your performance and studied your approach, and I see these patterns, and there's two things that I want you to change. And if you make these changes, they will produce better results, and, blah, blah, blah. I would direct them, you know. I take tennis lessons. My tennis coach often directs me to do certain things. You got to hold the racket this way, or you got to move your feet here, or whatever. Directing. Secondly, we could have a discussion. I could say to the person, how do you think you did on this task? What do you think you did well? What could you improve on? What would you do next time? So again, getting their thoughts and ideas and input. I want to help people become self-coaching. I want them to critique their own behavior. I was reading about some of the top tennis players, and they said that they're very good in a match. They're very self-aware of what's working and what's not working, and they can make the changes during the match, and they get better as the match goes on. So that idea of self-coaching is really important. Or going back again to my third style is delegating. I could say, Chris, I want you to go off and think about your performance over the last 6 months in this area. And I want you to critique how do you think you did, and come up with some conclusions and some comments. And I want to meet tomorrow to discuss that. So on your own, you're going off now, and again, you're thinking about what did I do, what worked, what didn't, how did I do, and you're coming into the meeting with a discussion, a critique of your performance. It's based on what you thought about, whereas the discussion is based on my questions. The quality of my questions is going to influence the quality of the discussion. I hope that makes sense. But
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I like the question, and you nailed it there at the end where you said that the quality of your questions will dictate the output, and
yep.
I absolutely agree with that. Right, the questions that you ask as a leader, as a manager, are key, because what that's going to do is that's going to allow the employee, the whoever it is that you're speaking to kind of gear their answer towards what the question was. And if your question is really basic and just overarching, or you don't really have any real reason to ask this question, they're going to give you a non-answer, or at least a non-important answer, because you're not asking the right question. And being able to ask that question in such a way that will help to guide that person to think critically about whatever it is, to come up with an answer, that is important, because you could need to find out X, and you could ask, okay, hey, what is X? Or why did you get X? Or, there's so many different ways that you can ask the question to find out the answer. But if you ask it the right way, with the right intentions behind it, the way that you ask it, speaking of the communication style that you use, the inflection of your voice, all of those things are so important, even down to the non-vocal type of language that you're using, your nonverbal skills. All of those things have to be right in line as the leader, so that you can get the other person, I want to say subordinate, but you can get the other person that's a part of that conversation to creatively think about the answer, because otherwise they will just give you a canned answer because you gave them a canned question. That question that you ask is so important.
Yeah, I agree. Couldn't agree more. Yep. Critical.
Now, I know that you've written about organizational alignment. I guess, what does it mean for an organization to be aligned, and how can leaders foster that type of unity across the departments or groups that they have at the business?
Yeah, that's I think a very important topic. Alignment for me means that all of the parts and processes and policies are in line, they're in sync, so to speak, they're coordinated, all supporting the company's strategy. The strategy is critically important. The strategy identifies how am I going to compete and succeed and win in the marketplace. And you got to get that right. And then all of the things that support that, the structure, the systems, the people, the training, the reward and recognition programs, all of those things need to be in sync, supporting the strategy, the values of the company, et cetera. A lot of times companies are misaligned. You know, let's take values, for example. The senior leaders say we have these company values, but the way they talk and behave doesn't align with the values. You know, sometimes the employees aren't aligned with the skills and motivation they need to successfully implement the strategy. Sometimes managers don't have the skill set to operate in a matrix structure or even in a functional structure, or don't manage well across the organization. There's not a lot of cross collaboration with teams and groups and what have you. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong and create misalignments, and that puts a drag on the organization, and the organization doesn't perform at a high level. I when I think about a highly aligned team, you know, if you watch a pit crew at a race car track, you know, there's 12 to 18 people, all with a very specific role and function, and they are so aligned with what they do and how quickly they do it. It's pretty amazing. When we watch a high-performing athletic team, we see alignment. Everybody's in sync, and everybody has got the strategy down, and they're executing everything flawlessly. So, you know, those types of examples illustrate a highly aligned team and how great their performance is. Organizations need to work on that. It needs to be a priority. I'm a big believer that the senior leadership team needs to talk about alignment at every staff meeting they have. You know, a lot of, I was reading about this one company that they had an offsite meeting to talk about strategy, and they talked about various initiatives that the company had going on. And it turned out about half the initiatives they were involved with did not support the company strategy. I know that's hard to believe, but that happens, you know. Certain vice president has some new project or some new initiative he thinks will be great, and he goes off and starts an initiative on that, and it doesn't relate to the company's strategy. You know, it's wasted time and effort and not good. So, yeah, I think that's an important topic, and I think the more aligned a company is, the higher level their performance typically will be.
Now, we just recently talked about having the root cause, and I think
Yep.
oftentimes if they don't have a good organizational, an alignment structure, they're not aligned to whatever their core values are, probably stems from their and you said mission and vision a couple times, and I'm going to come back to that because I have a question about that. But they're not aligned to those things because they don't have that very clearly defined. And I guess before we do that, you say mission and vision. Are those do you count those as two different things, or are they one? Can you go into depth for that?
I think they're two different things. I think mission to me is purpose. What's your purpose? What's your reason for being? Vision is your long-term goal. Where do you want to get to? So I look at them, yeah, that way.
Yeah. And of course, these businesses that are not aligned very well probably oftentimes do not have a very clear mission or vision for their future, right? And if you don't have a very clear, definitive, easy to understand mission, then it's easy to get lost on what you're supposed to be doing. So if you're running a business, if you're working for a business and you don't know what your mission is, your mission statement, or what the vision for the future of that business is, then that needs to be the first thing that you go into your leadership team and figure that out. Then once
Mm-hmm.
you have that, that's the root cause. Then you can
Yep.
go through and have an alignment across the different areas of your business. Once you have that tangible thing that everybody can is easy for everybody to
Mm-hmm.
understand.
Yeah, in my book, I talk about vertical alignment, that from the top of the organization all the way to the bottom, that all employees have a clear and complete understanding of the company's mission, vision, and strategy, and values for that matter. Um, and they support those things. So there's a lot of clarity, and people, know how they fit into those things. So that's really important. I also talk about horizontal alignment, that across the organization, the processes and teams that need to work together in different departments, different groups, they're aligned. They have commonality of the um, process that they're using, the approach they're using, the policies and procedures fit what they're doing, and that leads to greater cooperation, greater collaboration, better results, better products and services when at the other end of the output of the process, so to speak.
Now, of course, these leaders we know are under some of the most stress
Yeah.
out of all the different positions in the business. And I think stress management is a challenge for leaders and individuals alike. Do you have any recommendations for leaders on how to manage their stress while, of course, fulfilling on their job, while helping their teams and their employees also manage stress, but also continue on in these high pressure, sometimes type environments?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Chris. My simple approach is that when your demands exceed your coping skills, you'll have a stress reaction. So when I think about demands, we all have a list of things we could write down, of things we need to get done today, this week, this month. Your list would differ from my list, but we could create a list. Um, then we have some coping skills, our ability to get things done, how well we plan, manage our time, make decisions, collaborate, things like that. And if we can't handle the list of demands we have, we typically start to get stressed. We get anxious, we get worried, this isn't getting done. So as a leader, what can I do? I can reduce the demands. That's not always feasible, but sometimes I can. Sometimes I can delegate more. Sometimes I can prioritize better. Everything is not a priority. I got to have my 3 to 5 priorities and focus on those. I also can improve my coping skills. I can, work on getting better at time management, or making decisions more quickly, or, whatever it might be. And if I do those types of things, hopefully it'll reduce my stress level, or my stress reactions, and I'll be more effective and more competent as a leader. Same thing applies to the team or group that I'm leading. If I can reduce my demands on them, we've all seen those leaders that everything's a priority and everything must be done today, and they're ineffective, and they create a very stressed out group. So that's a problem. I like Jack Welch when he was the CEO at GE. He had a program called Workout. He would get the right people in a room with the senior leader, and it'd say, what can we stop doing? What isn't adding value? What's wasting time? And and I know that over time we start to do things that you look at and you scratch your head and say, why am I having this meeting? It's really not needed. Or maybe I could have this meeting once a month. Or why do we have this report that's done that no one looks at? My daughter works at a company where they have lots and lots of PowerPoint, not PowerPoint, Excel spreadsheets on all sorts of metrics and what have you, and they're measuring everything and anything, and it's way, way, way too much. So cutting back on all that's not needed, not necessary, can free up a lot of time and wasted energy on these things. So cut your demands down. Uh, Work on improving your coping skills. I think that's always good to be working on those. And if you do that, you'll manage your stress level hopefully more effectively.
I gotta say that is a brilliant approach to what it looks like to be kind of in a high stress type of environment. When your coping skills, your coping methods, whatever your coping ability, when that fails, that's where the stress comes in, right? And I
Yep.
have not thought about that before, but really that is the key thing. And unfortunately, there's not very many people that one talk about that, but on top of that, there's not very many people who help us come up with coping abilities, right?
Yep.
And that is you hit it. Like that is the
Well,
key thing. That's where the stress comes from.
not only that, Chris, but what happens when our demands exceed, or when our demands get really increased to a dramatic level? We often stop engaging in our coping skills. Now, when I say coping skills, it includes things like meditation, yoga, working out, getting exercise. Oftentimes, when people's demands increase, they stop working out, they stop meditating, they stop going to yoga. And of course, then they get more stressed out because now they're just the demands and demands and demands, and they're getting overwhelmed, and they're, worried and concerned, and nothing is taking any of that emotional energy away from them. And before you know it, they're a mess, and their productivity's gone downhill, and that creates further demands, and it just snowballs.
Yeah. Again, yeah, right on. I had not thought about it like that, but what a wonderful way to make that so
Mm,
easy to understand and give everybody an opportunity to have some insight in that. Yeah.
mm,
Wow.
yeah.
Now, Paul, finally, with your experience in teaching leadership, what advice would you offer somebody who is stepping into the leadership role? What what would be some things that they could focus on to help them lead efficiently right from the get-go?
I think it's really important going into a new leadership role is to, um, again, going back to diagnosing the situation, but I think it's important to ask a lot of questions, make a lot of observations, um, talk to a lot of people, customers, your employees, get to know them, get to know the key processes in your group, um, get to know what's measured and why. So the one thing you don't want to do is go in and on day 3 you start making changes left and right. I've seen leaders do that, and it's disaster. So get to know the organization, get to know the people, get to know the structure, processes, policies, rules. How are things working currently? What's working well? Where are the successes? Um, who are your star performers? So, what do they do? Um, and then begin to formulate what can you do, kind of step 2 in the leadership process. What can you do to help the organization or team improve? What would make them more effective? Based on your observations and your discussions, what one or two things would help them be more effective and be more successful? And begin to present that to the team and begin to get their buy-in and their thoughts on it, and go that way. But don't jump in with 4 things you're going to change on day 2.
Yeah, agreed. Yes. Hey, Paul, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your experience with us today. Your insights on leadership, organizational alignment, stress management have been invaluable. And I know our listeners have gained a lot from this episode as well. And before we leave you, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I just might mention, I hope this is okay. I've written a lot of books. They're very short and to the point. Most of them are 50 to 70 pages in length. They're also very inexpensive. They're available on Amazon, but they go into many of the subjects we talked about today. So if you're looking for more, I don't know, details or more suggestions on using some of these techniques and styles and approaches, you can always go to that resource and buy a book and check it out. So that's what I would suggest.
Very good. Thank you. And I'll be sure to leave the link in the show notes for you as well. And
Okay,
listeners,
great.
thank you. Yeah, listeners, I want to say thank you for listening. And if you want to learn more about Paul's work, make sure to check out his books. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and making a difference.